Hello, Tar Heel Nation. Welcome back to another episode of UNC Hoops Talk Podcast. We're back from a little bit of a letdown in the ACC Tournament, but we covered that one in the last podcast. We don't need to revisit that at all anymore. It's that time of year again. It's bracket time. I got mine here. We're going to talk about that. It's March Madness, the craziness. If you haven't felt it already, it's here. It's go time. We got 68 teams right now in the field as this is being recorded, and it's go time for the Tar Heels. New season. We're 0-0, 6 games left, hopefully, and I don't want to jinx anything there, but yeah, let's jump into it. I want to thank you for listening, for watching, interacting, whatever it is, sharing it out. Support. I appreciate all of the support I get on this podcast from Tar Heel Nation and from you guys, and I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. I do it to unite us as Tar Heel Nation and be able to talk Tar Heel basketball at any time, any place with anyone. Those are kind of my catchphrases for the podcast, if you will. But yeah, let's jump in. A little bit of a different podcast as we don't have any games to review. We've talked about the ACC tournament. I had an awesome experience there, besides the letdown of losing to Duke. And it was great. My first ACC tournament in person, my first Duke Carolina game in person. A lot of firsts for me. Got to meet some great people, some interviews, some people. If you haven't, you can check those out on YouTube or on the podcast feed. I put the interviews up that I was able to do, and just a lot of fun. And everything was perfect, minus the, of course, letdown or loss that we had to Duke. That's never goes as planned when that happens. But we're jumping into the bracket here. I am going to go through the bracket. I'm going to fairly quickly, or as quickly as I can, kind of go through my bracket. Although I do want to throw out there, I don't have enough upsets right now. So it's going to change before Thursday. I will be picking more upsets than what I have right now. I'm way too chalk. I realize that. I just got to figure out which upsets I want to pick. So keep that in mind as I'm going through my bracket here. At least in the first round, first 2 rounds, some changes will be made. If you're in a bracket challenge against me or something like that, won't be the same as what it sounds like here. But I'm guessing my final 4 won't change. I don't know. It's still pretty chalk there, but we'll see. I make no guarantees. This is just what I got so far. This is my kind of first go through. So, and then of course we'll talk about the Tar Heel game a little bit. I don't know a lot about Texas Southern, so we're not going to hit on it a lot, but that'll be there. And if you're not in a bracket challenge, or if you want one more to join, I am having a bracket challenge for the podcast. The group name, it's on ESPN, so either ESPN.com or on the app that you can put on your phone as far as tournament challenge or whatever they call it is called. But go to the group or search for the group UNC Hoops Talk Podcast, and then you need a password. The password is no spaces. It's Tar Heels 17. So capital T, capital H, number 17 at the end. Tar Heels 17. In the group UNC Hoops Talk Podcast. And if you can't find it, hit me up on Twitter, email, whatever is easiest for you, and I will send you a link that will send you right to it and help you get into it. I will help you with everything except for making your picks, because obviously I'm competing against you. So let's jump in, go through my bracket. Again, I want to do this fairly quickly because I don't want this to be boring podcasting or boring radio or whatever you want to call it. So it would probably be easiest if you had your bracket in front of you to follow along, because I'm going to kind of read these off quickly. I'm going to start up in the East region, which is Villanova's region. They are the 1 seed. And spoiler alert, I have all the 1 seeds winning the first round. But yeah, I have Villanova winning. I have Virginia Tech beating Wisconsin, and then Villanova beating Virginia Tech. I have Virginia beating UNC Wilmington. I have Florida beating East Tennessee State, and then Virginia winning between those two. I have SMU winning over either Providence or USC. I have Baylor winning over New Mexico State, and then SMU beating Baylor. I guess that's technically my first. Well, I guess Virginia over Florida is technically upset. And I guess you'd say Virginia Tech over Wisconsin is upset as far as seeding goes. But yeah, SMU over Baylor there. I have Marquette beating South Carolina, which would set up a Wojo versus Coach K matchup in the second round. I do have Duke winning that. So let's see. So that sets up a I guess what am I to the Sweet 16? Then in my Sweet 16 in that round, I have Villanova beating Virginia and Duke beating SMU, which again is the 1-2 there, pretty chalk. I don't know if I'll change that, but it's going to be a pretty reoccurring theme there. And then I do have Villanova beating Duke to go to the Final Four for the second straight year. Then moving down to the West bracket, I have Gonzaga beating South Dakota State. As much as I'd love, I was born in South Dakota. I'm not necessarily from South Dakota. I lived there the first 5 years of my life. Very close to South Dakota State, actually. So I'd love to see them win. But I would also like to see the Gonzaga make the Final Four just to kind of stop that narrative of it's never going to happen. It's probably going to happen at some point. Probably I don't have it this year. I didn't pick it this year, but I do have Gonzaga over South Dakota State. I have Vanderbilt beating Northwestern with Gonzaga beating Vanderbilt. I had Notre Dame over Princeton. A lot of people are picking Princeton there. I have West Virginia over Bucknell, and then I have West Virginia beating Notre Dame in the second round. I have Xavier over Maryland. That was a tough one. It was one of the last ones I filled in. I don't know. Both those teams are up and down. I don't know what's going to happen. I have Florida State over Florida Gulf Coast, although that game is being played in Orlando, in Florida, which could help Florida Gulf Coast. Obviously, Florida State's from there as well. But for a 14 seed to be playing in their home state was unusual for me, or at least I thought that was a little bit unusual. And so that kind of threw up a flag for me. But I do have Florida State winning, and I do have Florida State beating Xavier in the second round. Again, Florida State is a team. There's a lot of these games or teams that I think, they could easily win that, win 2-3 games, but then they could easily lose the first round. That's what I kept saying to myself, is like, man, they could win a couple games, but then it's like, they could lose that first one. So I do have Florida State over Xavier in the second round. I have VCU beating St. Mary's. I think I picked all the 10s over 7s. I'm not necessarily on purpose. I don't know. I did that. And then I have Arizona beating North Dakota with Arizona beating VCU, which brings us to the Sweet 16 again. I have West Virginia upsetting Gonzaga. That would be, I think that's my only one seed not going to the Final Four. And again, that's what I'm saying. It's way too chalk right now. But yeah, I have West Virginia over Gonzaga, and I have Arizona beating West Virginia, and then Arizona moving on to the Final Four. So in my Elite Eight there, I told you I had 1-2 in the Villanova bracket. Here I have, 4 and 2 with a 2 moving on. So again, we'll see what I keep. Let's move up to the Midwest bracket. That's Kansas as the 1 seed. I have Kansas winning over, and I already kind of spoiled it. I told you I have all the number 1 seeds making the Final Four except for Gonzaga, but Kansas over whoever they play in the 1-16 matchup. I have Miami over Michigan State. I have Nevada upsetting Iowa State. It's one like, Iowa State could be really good, but they could lose that first one. Purdue over Vermont, and again, it's like Purdue's been up and down. I'm not impressed with the Big Ten. They could easily lose to Vermont. I shouldn't say easily. They could lose to Vermont, but again, they could give Kansas trouble because they're bigs. So I do have Purdue over Nevada, so they'll be matching up with Kansas in the Sweet 16. Spoiler, you already know who's going to win that game. But like I said, Purdue could give Kansas a run for their money if their bigs are playing and they're really taking it to Kansas. I have Rhode Island upsetting Creighton. I have Oregon beating Iona. I have Oklahoma State over Michigan. As hot as Michigan's playing in the Big Ten, I'm not impressed with the Big Ten as a whole. Maybe I don't know. I'm just being too biased or something. But I have Oklahoma State, and also Oklahoma State has, I don't know the exact stat, but they have like the top ranked offense in some category. I don't know if it's efficiency. I don't think it's just outright points. I don't think they score the most points in the country, but they do have a very good offense. We know we can handle them from Maui, but we also look very different from Maui, and they do as well. But then I have Louisville over Jacksonville State. with Louisville beating Oklahoma State. Brings us to the Sweet 16. Again, I have Kansas over Purdue, although, again, that's to me, it could be a blowout or it could be really close, or even Purdue winning. And I do have Oregon beating Louisville. I think part of it was I saw that I was going way too chalk, and I was like, I need something besides a 1-2 there, and so I took Oregon. But I mean, Louisville is playing really well. They could, again, Louisville could beat Oregon, they could beat Kansas and be in the Final Four. But that's what's so great about this time of year, I guess, right? All right, so down into North Carolina's bracket. Obviously, I have North Carolina winning over Texas Southern. I have them playing Arkansas in the second round and beating Arkansas, of course. I have Middle Tennessee State beating Minnesota, although that's one I almost want to change back to not having the upset, because everybody's picking that one. When everybody picks an upset, it usually doesn't happen. And Minnesota's been good. I mean, again, I've been harping on the Big Ten, but Minnesota's been pretty good for what they usually are this year. So I'm torn there, because I would love to see Middle Tennessee State win. I live like an hour from where Middle Tennessee State is, from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And I grew up in Minnesota and never really liked the Gophers, so I'd love to see them beat them. But because everybody's picking Middle Tennessee State, I might actually take that one away and go more chalk by taking Minnesota. I don't know. I haven't decided that yet. I have Butler beating Winthrop, and then I have Butler beating MTSU. I'd probably have Butler beating Minnesota if I do switch it as well. And then actually, I haven't filled this one in yet. Cincinnati against either Kansas State or Wake Forest. I think they'll play Wake Forest. And there's always one team. Again, it's a stat that kind of doesn't matter for this year, but since we've had playing games, there's always been a play-in team win the round of 64 game as well. And so I'm really contemplating having Wake Forest beat Cincinnati. And I may even wait until that game's done. I think they play tonight, but I may wait till that one's over. If Wake wins, I may take them over Cincinnati. I don't know if I'd take Kansas State over Cincinnati, though. And then I have UCLA over Kent State, UCLA beating whoever I pick there. I have Wichita State beating Dayton. Again, that's one. I mean, Dayton's a really good team. To me, this game is like, both those teams could win a first-round game, but they play against each other, so they can't obviously both do that. They're both really good teams. Wichita State is favored by like 6.5 points, or at least that's what it opened at. But it's also, that's another one of those upsets that everybody's taking, or I should say upset according to seeding. Obviously, if you're favored by 6.5 points, it's not an upset. But I don't know. I've gone back and forth too, because everybody's taking Wichita State. Do I want to take Dayton instead? But then I have Kentucky over Northern Kentucky, Kentucky beating Wichita State. Of course, I have North Carolina. Right now, it's North Carolina. Oh, whoa. I have to go back here. I said I had Butler over either Middle Tennessee State or Minnesota. I actually put Middle Tennessee State over Butler here, and North Carolina beating them. So that's one probably where I have to put my most thought into. I'm going to have Minnesota winning that first round game, and then who win. That would be changing the second round game as well, because right now I have Middle Tennessee State over Butler. Of course, I have North Carolina there. North Carolina is going to beat whoever they have there, whether it's Butler, Minnesota, Middle Tennessee State, maybe even if Winthrop gets there for whatever reason. North Carolina is going to beat them. All right, you heard it here. And then UCLA against Kentucky. Obviously, they played before. UCLA beat them in Rupp. I think Kentucky is playing a little bit better now, although they've had a little bit of guard trouble since then. But I did pick Kentucky to beat UCLA. Maybe it's the revenge factor. I don't know, whatever. Just I'm not overly impressed with UCLA. Obviously, offensively, they're phenomenal. But just as a whole and as a tournament team, putting stuff together, I picked Kentucky. And then I picked North Carolina over Kentucky, of course. And again, it would be obviously UCLA beat Kentucky. I picked Kentucky in the rematch. Kentucky beat us in the regular season on neutral court. I'm picking us in the rematch. I don't know. Obviously, in Memphis, they're going to be a little bit closer. It's going to be full of Big Blue Nation, which won't necessarily be good for us. But I think we can do it. And of course, I'm not going to pick Kentucky to beat North Carolina. And spoiler alert, I don't have anybody beating North Carolina, but that shouldn't be surprised. All right, so that sets up our Final Four. I have Villanova playing against Arizona. I have Kansas playing against UNC. Again, 3 number ones, then number 2 seed. it's happened before. It's not like it would be precedent to have that many number 1 seeds in the Final Four, but it doesn't usually happen that often that many 1 seeds, someone else, gets knocked off. Duke obviously could knock off Villanova. Like I said, Louisville, I think, could knock off Kansas. Obviously, we could lose Kentucky. I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know if we could lose to UCLA, if I really see that, because we like to run so much. Of course, they could go crazy from the 3-point line with Bryce Alford and Ball there and stuff. But I just feel like a team that runs with us and the way we play defense, that we could handle UCLA even maybe easier than Kentucky. But we're going to beat both, right? We're going to make the Final Four. So obviously I have us beating Kansas, which part of the reason I say we can beat Kentucky too is they're going to have a tougher game against UCLA in that round before than we will with, again, Butler, Minnesota, Middle Tennessee State, Winthrop, whoever we're playing there. And so, we should have the advantage because those are, Sweet 16 Elite 8 games, only 2 days apart. So we would have another tougher game with Kansas, whereas unless they're playing Louisville, I don't see them having that tough of a time with Oregon or, whoever they're playing there. But because we have that week rest, it doesn't come into that factor that much. We're going to play either Saturday, Sunday, and then we'll play Kansas the following Saturday. So that doesn't come into play as much. Obviously, we know the whole Kansas-Roy connection. They love to put us up against them. I picked UNC. not much climax there, whatever. But yeah, of course, I picked Kansas to lose to us. It's about time for Roy to get the revenge and us to kind of get over that hump. So Arizona and Villanova. I actually set up a rematch of the final game from last year. I think it is time. Just talked about redemption for Roy over Kansas. It is time for North Carolina to get redemption over Villanova. Obviously, it would suck horribly to lose to Villanova in the championship game 2 years in a row. But I'm hoping, too, that that will give our guys the motivation to not let it happen. They see that Villanova team on the other side across the court from them, and they do everything in their power to not lose that game. And so I think North Carolina is going to be the national championship. Probably not a big surprise to anyone listening to this that I picked North Carolina to win it. Maybe a little bit of surprise that I almost want to see Villanova. If we make it, I almost want to see Villanova in that championship game so that we can beat them this time and show them who's the better program. And you know what? Let's just blow them out. I haven't picked a score yet, so I can't tell you that. I don't know yet what it is. Maybe I'll update you up in the next one once I pick it and once everything's final and I can tell you any changes. Obviously, we'll go through who won, good games, where I was wrong, that kind of stuff. But yeah, there you go. That's what I got. North Carolina beating Villanova in the final game. There are my picks. Again, if you want to enter the podcast bracket challenge, just search on ESPN or on the app that ESPN has for the tournament challenge or whatever they call it. Search UNC Hoops Talk Podcast. Password is Tar Heels 17 with a capital T and a capital H. I'm not even sure if capitalizing matters, but yeah, as far as matchup in the first couple of rounds for North Carolina, I know absolutely nothing about Texas Southern besides their record is 23-11, that they're a 16 seed and the number one has never lost to a 16 seed, and we are not going to be that team. We are favored by 27 points. I just looked it up. And as far as start time goes, we are, like a half hour after the game before us ends, which is the Arkansas Seton Hall game. They start, I believe, at 12:30 Eastern, which to me would be about 3 Eastern when we start. But everybody is saying 4 Eastern, so maybe there is a bigger break in there. I don't know. I should say everybody except ESPN is saying 4 Eastern. ESPN has 3 Eastern, but I looked on the NCAA app. They said 4 Eastern. I looked on North Carolina's website, goheels.com, at the schedule. They're saying 4 Eastern. So, yeah, there you have it. And that is on Friday, by the way. We don't play Thursday opening day. Our opening day is on Friday. We're playing in Greenville, South Carolina. They said this is our first tournament game in South Carolina. If you have been following anything college basketball related, you probably heard that the tournament was supposed to be in North Carolina, but because of the legislation and all that stuff that we're not going to get into, it was moved to South Carolina. So a little bit of interesting stuff there. Shouldn't matter really at all. And then we get the winner of Seton Hall, Arkansas in the second round. Either way, I don't think we have too much of an issue with them, or at least hopefully. Arkansas can be kind of physical. I think has given us trouble in the past, but I don't think they're as good this year. And so, yeah, I picked Arkansas to win, but I picked us to win, and I don't have any problem being confident in that, hopefully. Knock on wood, right? Got it. All right. So, yeah, that's what I got. I would love to hear from you what yours is. Obviously, if you're in the bracket challenge with me, the podcast bracket challenge, I will see what you have. Love to have you, but I would also love to just have you connect with me if you haven't already on Twitter. Hit me up in the DMs, or tweet at me, email, whatever. I appreciate all the feedback I get. You guys have been awesome, and yeah, I just want to make sure. I love to hear that, or knowing who listens, and let me know how you found the podcast. Let me know where you listen. There's all kinds of stuff that I'd love to know, and obviously just to talk Tar Heel basketball as well. So let's connect and cheer on the Heels together, and we can root against everybody else, or root against each other for every other game if you want. I'm okay with that. So I think that's all I got. I don't think I'm going to be able to podcast in between every game or every round. So the next podcast will probably be like next Monday after the first two rounds, after we've hopefully beaten Arkansas or Seton Hall, and we'll go from there. If I can, if we play Thursday and I can podcast Friday, but weekends are a little bit crazy, and then of course spring break is coming up for my kids, so it'll be a little bit harder in that sense too to podcast even during the week. But as much as I can this month, I'm going to be getting on here and talking with you guys and talking Tar Heels and breaking down games and previewing what we got coming up. So yeah, I look forward to it. I hope you do too as well. And I hope you will subscribe on iTunes, on YouTube, or wherever you listen to the podcast so that you get it right away. And I hope everybody has a good week, is ready for some college basketball. This is the greatest time to be a stay-at-home dad as well. Greatest part of my job, well, I should say greatest part is probably being able to spend and raise my kids, but it's definitely a huge benefit to me to be able to turn on those Thursday games, Friday games, be watching all day, and watching with my kids. They aren't necessarily into it yet as much as hopefully they will be when they get a little bit older, but they know when Dad turns on basketball, it's go time. So that's all I got for you. I don't want to keep rambling on too much here and taking you guys' time. I appreciate you guys, and until next time, go Heels.